In this episode of the Intentional Mom podcast, I'm excited to share with you a conversation that I had with Karen Ehman for our Simplify Your Holiday Summit presentation. And it is a great conversation where we talk about something that is a problem, maybe you'd call it a problem for a lot of women, and that is people pleasing. If you are a people pleaser, this is going to be an episode you do not want to miss. Let's jump in and get started with this great conversation. Well, hey there, I am Jennifer Roskamp, a certified life coach and homeschool mom of 9 who is passionate about helping women just like you embrace the here and now while also being focused on creating the life you actually want. In reality, it's not about thinking life will get so much better or so much easier when you fill in the blank. Let's work on creating a life you love now. So let's dive in and get started on redefining Supermom to be someone who is present, intentional, and content rather than perfect in our homes, in our lives, and in our own skin. Let's get started. This is the Intentional Mom Podcast. I am so excited today to introduce you to Karen Ehman. She is a New York Times bestselling author and writer for Proverbs 31 Ministries, Encouragement for Today online devotions, and a teacher in the First 5 Bible study app. She has written 19 books in Bible studies, including Keep It Shut, What to Say, How to Say It, and When to Say Nothing at All, and the 2020 ECPA Devotional Book of the Year, Settle My Soul, 100 Quiet Moments to Meet with Jesus. She is married to her college sweetheart, Todd, and is the mother of 6 children, 3 biological and 3 in-laws by marriage, although she forgets which ones are which. Karen enjoys spending her days feeding the many people who gather around her mid-century dining table to process life and enjoy her county fair blue ribbon winning cooking. Awesome. Well, welcome, Karen. Thank you so much.
For having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So first, I would love to know a little bit about what your journey has been like with people pleasing. How has this become something that you're passionate about and something that you can help us with today? Kind of what did that journey look like for you?
Well, as long as I can remember, I have been a people pleaser. I wanted to be liked in school. When I was young and in elementary school, I wanted to please my teachers and get good grades. And as I got older in high school and college and as an adult, it only got worse. And I kind of thought it was a strength, actually, to make people happy and be available to help whenever. But about 5 years ago, one day I just hit a wall. I had said yes to a very simple request from my best friend from college, and I hung up the phone with her, and I just knew that I should know, but I said yes, and I walked out to the back of our property, and I sat down and I had a long talk with God, and I just realized something had to change because it was starting to affect my health as far as like I couldn't sleep and I was having my left eye twitch and it wouldn't stop. And it was really starting to kind of manifest itself physically. And so that was at the beginning of the summer. And I really felt after praying about it for a couple of days that God was calling me to a season of necessary and no. And by that, I mean, I was to do only what was necessary for my family, my ministry, my job, and say no to everything else for that entire summer. And that was kind of the beginning for me to realize that I was so addicted to people pleasing. I needed to clear everything off my plate for those 3 months and then put only back on what I felt God was calling me to do. And it was very pivotal in my journey to stop trying to make everybody else happy while I was making myself miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I find so interesting about your story there is something that I think so often as women, we often experience, which is we can push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves and just kind of keep going. And often, sometimes, maybe often, it is, we keep doing that until physical things take over. And then it's like, that's our body's way of saying, of course, hello, you have to pay attention to me. Like, you cannot keep doing this to me. And I don't know what it is about us women, but in so many ways, it is so hard for us to somehow see what's happening before we get to that point that really does have to kind of be that pivotal point at some, for in a lot of cases. So it seems like such a common journey. So I'm glad that I can relate to that, and I'm sure many others can as well. So how how can we then identify if we are a people pleaser? Like, did you know, would you have labeled yourself that way prior to that? Like, you knew you liked to make people happy and all that stuff, but would you have kind of labeled yourself that way? And how do we know that? I mean, as I thought about it at first for myself, I kind of classified myself as a non-people pleaser. As I thought about this, I really thought, I wonder, am I? But then as I thought about it more, I began to question if actually I am in some ways, because I'm a peacemaker who doesn't like conflict. And so I can see how sometimes I am a people pleaser when certain things or variables come into play. And so are all people pleasers in some way? Is this something that we should all kind of investigate on some level?
It's a really great question because as I started diving into scripture and reading studies about people pleasing, I realized that there are a lot of different kind of personalities to people pleasing. It's not a one size fits all thing. Maybe you're a peacemaker. That's how my husband is too. He pleases people because he doesn't like there to be conflict. So he wants everybody to go along and get along. And so people pleasers sometimes are peacemakers. Other times, people pleasers are perfectionists. And to them, having a perfect life relationally with other people is to not have anybody be upset with them.
Mm.
Some people are people pleasers because they, just really like to be liked. And being liked often is more important to them than their sanity, because they're crazy. So I think that it can take a lot of different forms. And I found that some people are people pleasers only with certain people in their life. Like I with everybody. Like I just wanted everybody to be happy. And I think it really stemmed from my childhood. I grew up in an abusive home with an alcoholic father that if you made him upset, you got hit. So do not make him angry. Now, my dad came back to the Lord and lived a great life as a Christian later. He just passed away not too long ago. So I always like to say that. But, back when I was young and in elementary school and growing up, he was often drunk. I didn't want to make him mad because I didn't want him to be angry with me. And then I had my mom who her life was not turning out like she wanted it to. And I didn't want to add to her sadness. So I pleased her just because I didn't want her to be upset and be sad. So it's not always that we people please because of our personalities. Sometimes it's we people please because of the actions of others. We don't want to make them angry and have them stomp their foot, or we don't want to make them sad and have them drop their smile. So I think there's just a lot of things that play into it. But I would say that everybody in at least one area, maybe with just one person, does struggle with people pleasing.
Yeah, that's it's almost like that situational people pleasing. And I think too, again, as I thought about this myself first, I think initially it was really easy for me just to say, you know what, I'm not a people pleaser. And so I tried to answer the question really rather quickly. But I really did need to sit and take my time with it and kind of, I guess I didn't think about it till just now. Like you said, I kind of thought about myself in different relationships and thought, am I a people pleaser with, my immediate family? Am I a people pleaser with my extended family? Am I a people pleaser with others, like church things that I might volunteer with? You're right in the fact that I think it does vary based on the different roles and circumstances that we're in. So it definitely seems like a question we need to sit with for a while before we can kind of figure it out. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, because it can take a lot of different forms, and we have to just really be honest with ourselves about our motives. Because a lot of times we just look at the action and think, oh, well, I said yes to being, I don't know, on that committee or whatever because they needed somebody to help. And don't good Christians, don't we like to help and serve and love? But sometimes we need to go, but what's my motive here? Like, did I really say yes to that because there was a need that needed to be met and I had the availability and the passion to do it? Or is the person in charge of it who's asking me to do this somebody I really want to be friends with, and I want to impress? We really need to be honest about our motives to get to the root of whether or not we're people pleasing.
Yeah. And that brings to mind too, what I've read in different books and stuff too. And I know Lisa Turkhurst, who you are real familiar with, I know in at least one, if not more of her books, I know she speaks directly to, and this might be something you speak directly to on the same topic, is when we do say yes, but we're resentful about it later. Like we know that the answer should be no, but we say yes because it's the right thing to do. But then we do so much damage by saying yes because we're resentful towards that yes or towards that person later. And that is definitely something that we should definitely examine, because that's, we need to know that going into it. And that if we were honest with ourselves, like you say, and we're more aware that we would feel that resentment, then we would say, well, we don't want to sabotage the relationship in that way. So then, giving a no is the right answer here. So yeah, that is such a true point as well. So, with the holidays, right? So the holidays are here, right around the corner, and that's what we're here to talk about. And so these are generally a time when I feel like those people pleasing behaviors are heightened. Everything for the holidays seems to kind of go into this pressure cooker, and then there's relationships and family dynamics and maybe people that we don't see except for during the holidays. And so these things can be complicated. So right now, we've got a little bit of a runway before the holidays actually arrive. So, how can you help us approach this holiday season in a more healthy way overall, especially if we know we tend to land on that people pleasing scale a little bit? What can we do now to maybe get ourselves not into a situation that we shouldn't be in and would regret that we are in?
Yeah, the holidays are really tough because everybody's expectations are so high. People, are expecting certain gifts, or they're expecting certain traditions, or they're expecting to host the family get together or to not host the family get together. And so, because so many expectations are not only high, but particular of what people are hoping will happen, it's like this huge jigsaw puzzle that's almost impossible to put together to make everybody happy. So, I think the first thing that I do when I go into the holidays, I like to say I have these little one sentence sermons I preach to myself, and there's a couple of them that I think about at the holidays. And the first one is that everyone else's happiness is not my assignment.
Mm.
My assignment is to be prayerful and careful and as helpful as I can be, but also to be honest about, can I host the get together? Maybe everyone's expecting me to, but I'm like, hey, we're getting new hardwood floors in our dining area, and the kitchen and the dining area is going to be torn up that week. It's just not going to work. Or, whatever it is, I need to be honest, but I need to be prayerful and careful and try to be helpful, but to realize my assignment is not to make everybody happy, because it's nearly impossible at the holidays. And then also, I think another one that I see at the holidays is not only that we're trying to make people happy, but we take on way too much. Like, isn't everybody asking, can you bake cookies? Can you be in charge of the costumes for the Christmas pageant, whatever? There's so many needs out there at the holidays, and responsibilities and tasks that people are asking us to take on. And so I had a mentor one time years ago when my children were little. She saw me running around trying to make everybody happy at the holidays and running myself ragged. And she said something to me that I've never forgotten. She said, you know what? Every need is not necessarily your call.
Mm.
One sentence sermon I preached to myself.
Yeah.
Not my call. Yes, there's a need. Yes, somebody needs to meet it, but it doesn't have to always be me. And if I step up every time there's a need and say yes to it, oh, I'll do it. Pick me so everybody likes me. Well, sometimes I'm saying yes to things I shouldn't. And then I'm taking the blessing away from the person that God meant to meet that need in the first place. So we need to remember every need's not necessarily our call. We need to be honest about our capacity, our limitations of time at the holidays, what that task is going to do to our other things we have on our plate and to our family and our responsibilities there, and just be very honest. Not that you don't take on things sometimes when it's kind of a sacrifice to do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't serve. Right? You should be very prayerful and careful and honest in your assessment of whether or not you can meet that need, and realize that every need is not necessarily your call.
I love that. And I love that you cued into one of my favorite words. And it's a relatively new word to me to think about. I was talking with Crystal Payne, it was in the last few months, and she used the word capacity. And I was, from the moment she said it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good word for women and moms, especially because I feel like we feel like our calling is to be limitless in our capacity. And I feel like other people might put that on us, but we do as well. And but I loved how she brought up that word and how you brought up that word too, because the truth of it is we do all have we do all have a capacity, and we have a capacity in a lot of different ways, right? We have capacity when we think about our time, we have capacity, and I think that's how Crystal and I were talking about it, but we also have capacity with what we can emotionally handle and what we can emotionally process, what our physical what we physically, right, like you talked about in the beginning, like our physical bodies have a capacity of how much they can take on and how much stress and strain and all that stuff they can endure too. So I love how you use that word because it's such a good word. And there was something else I loved that you said. And as a life coach, I try to say this very same thing and remind people of all the time, which is we are not, just like you said, we are not responsible for other people's happiness. We can't ever control anyone else's emotions. But so often we I think we get tripped up on thinking that we can, and that, oh, if only we could do this or not do this, we could control their response to it and make sure that everything about it was, positive for them. When in reality, we can't do that. So that was such a good reminder as well. So thank you for that. I think as humans, we are kind of wired to make others happy, right? I feel like we're kind of wired to not disappoint others, and that we want to feel loved and accepted by others. So how do we then, if we want to not slide down that slippery slope of getting to a point where our people pleasing does have negative side effects that are probably a lot of times unknown and certainly undesired, how can we have a more balanced approach to these types of things that we want to do for ourselves and others, and how we want people to, we want to be able to do these things for people, but how can we balance these things out where it's more healthy and not at such a huge expense, whether now or down the road?
I know this is going to sound like a really canned sort of Sunday school answer, but it's making it a matter of prayer. I know that sounds simple, but we often forget that. We just try to navigate all of these relationships and these yeses and nos and responsibilities and tasks and asks and all this. We just try to navigate it, hoping we don't upset people and we don't take on too much, but we never stop to really pray about it. And so every morning, this is going to sound silly, but this is how much of a people pleaser I am, and I've had to incorporate this into my life. But in the morning, even before I get out of bed, I will say, Lord, you know that there's probably going to be some times today when I'm asked to do something, take something on, to run to somebody's aid because they got themselves in a situation. Now they want me to get them out, whatever it is. That happens sometimes when you have adult children, but whatever it is, there are going to be times that I'm asked to take something on. Would you please help me discern if it's you tapping me on the heart, and saying, hey, here's a need you need to meet, or if it's just that person has a need, it's not I call, but I'm tempted to say yes. Help me to discern what assignments are from you and what ones I can just politely and directly say no to, and then not worry about what they think of me. And God is so faithful to me. And there are times when I see a text, I get an email, whatever, and I can feel an ask coming in. I think, oh, you know what? I really feel like this is God and this is an assignment from him, and I'm going to say yes. And there's other times I think, you know what? This person constantly asks me to do things. And it's because, I've taught them how to treat me because I've been such a yes girl in the past. So I've kind of sent out this syllabus. You know how when you get a syllabus at the beginning of school, it tells you exactly what you expect in that class. Well, we send out a syllabus to other people of what they can expect from us. So I sent this out to people that I'm a yes girl, that they can get themselves in a jam, and boy, Karen's going to help you right out. And so this person constantly is asking me to do things, not necessarily because it's God's assignment for me, but because she knows I'm an easy mark and I'm going to say yes. And so I just pray that prayer, and I ask the Lord, whenever I see those things coming out, help me to discern, help me to discern. Is this you? Is this the Holy Spirit tapping me on the heart saying, here's something I want you to do? Or is it just someone asking me and I need to say no?
Yeah. Such a great reminder that, that we can set ourselves up to not have to make that decision in the moment, but to actually just kind of ahead of time, kind of ground ourselves. And I love how you're mentioning, that's what I do every morning before I even get out of bed, and remembering that we don't, just like you say, we don't have to navigate as Christians. We don't have to navigate all of the ins and outs of life on our own. But so often we get caught up in that. So that's a great reminder that that's true as well. So here's the thing though, is that, and I know that you will agree with me on this, is it's not always just the expectations of others and the requests of others that get wrapped up in people pleasing, but sometimes we're so wrapped up in trying to people please ourselves too. And so we put pressure on ourselves, especially during the holidays, to do all and be all and make it all okay for everybody. How can we avoid, not necessarily, how can we be more healthy with ourselves, I guess, and our expectations for ourselves?
You just, again, need to be very honest in our assessment. And that word again, capacity, that we women, we have something we don't like to admit we have, and it's limitations. We keep running at breakneck speed, saying yes to everything, filling our plates so full that, we can't continue without the plate, breaking. And the thing is, we women think we are just so clever that when we're asked to take something else on, we don't actually think about removing something from our plate because we think we're so clever that if we just rearrange everything, somehow it's going to fit. But we have to remind ourselves we have limitations. We have capacity. We only have so much white space and so much margin in our life. And if we fill in everything, it really is a detriment because it doesn't allow for interruptions from God and ministry to others when it's God interrupting us, tapping us on the heart, saying, neighbor, she just lost her husband. You really need to, take her over a meal, sit with her, cry with her, see what it is that you can help with. Because, oh no, there's no white space on my calendar. We pack ourselves so tight that we don't leave any margins for those unexpected times when God is interrupting us, God's shifting our day and telling us to truly go make someone happy because it's on his agenda for us and not our own agenda. So we really need to guard that white space and that capacity fiercely and realize that we can't be so full that we have no wiggle room because that never ends well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say, I'm curious if you would agree that as we're coming up to the holidays, that we should probably, like, I can think about what the holidays typically look like for me and know that it would probably be in my best interest to put a little bit more white space on those months than I normally have, because there's just so many other variables, it seems like, that happen during that time. Right. And then I live in Michigan. I feel like, don't you live in Michigan too? Yeah. So it's like, you have the roads, like you can't depend on weather. You can't depend on anything. So I feel like a really smart thing we should do for the holidays is kind of plan in more of that white space. You agree with that as well?
Totally. Yes. Yes. Those unexpected things that sometimes you just want to do something fun. I remember when my kids were little, I used to go on these like little mystery trips with them. I would just, tell them all to bundle up. We're going somewhere. And I wouldn't tell them where it was until we got there. And if I didn't build in margin and white space to do fun things like that, my kids wouldn't have those memories today. If I was just so busy just doing everything on my task list.
Yeah. Yeah. And are there certain red flags that we can watch out for, to know that, hey, you're kind of crossing the line in this people pleasing way? Is there certain red flags that we can watch out for, whether they're physical symptoms for us or maybe emotional symptoms, anything that can kind of help us know, hey, pay attention, maybe before we get to the point of no return where we end up, really sick or something like that.
Yeah, I think definitely if you're having physical manifestations, you need to pay attention to that and deal with them. But I think for me, the little kind of check I get in my spirit that tells me I'm people pleasing in a certain situation is this. I will tell myself, what if this person who's asking me to do something and I'm feeling like I need to say yes because I want them to like me or I want them to think I'm competent or capable or compassionate, whatever it is, whatever response I'm wanting to get from them, I ask myself, would I say yes if this was my very best friend, Kelly, asking me to do something who I can easily say no to because she knows I struggle with people pleasing. She loves me. She doesn't want me to be over capacity. I can easily say no to her. If she were asking me to do this task, what would my answer be? And if I say, oh, my answer would be no, Cal, I've got too much going on. I can't do it. But to the person who's actually asking me, I want to say yes. Then I know that's a red flag. I'm caught up in people pleasing because I'm not being objective and just looking at the ask that's before me, what it is they want me to take on, what it is they want me to do. I'm not objectively looking at it. I'm factoring in who it is that's asking me.
So good that you kind of have that gauge, right? Like finding some sort of measure with which to compare against and say, all right, if it would be a no in this case, then it's, it's got to be a no this place. If it would be a yes here, then I know it's got to be a yes here, just having something like that to be so helpful. So we have talked about a lot of amazing things today, and one thing I like to ask everyone for is like one quick take action now tip, so we can kind of, again, start setting what we've talked about here into motion in some way. If someone is listening today and they're maybe not really sure where they fall on the scale, or maybe they know where they fall on the scale and they're already starting to feel maybe a little panicky, knowing that, you know what, I know this is a problem for me. And I know that if I want this holiday season to be different, I'm going to have to do some hard stuff. For that person, where could she maybe start right now? If she knows this is me, you're talking my language and I need to make it better. Where can she start to make it better?
I think the simplest thing to do is to learn to say the quiet part out loud and just be honest. And let me give you an example. So if someone asks you to do something and you start to feel like that welling up in you, like, oh, I want to say no. I want to say no, but they want me to say yes. So I'm tempted to say yes. To just say what you're thinking honestly out loud and say something like, hey, you know what, Jennifer, I really realize you have a need here. I'm very honored that you'd ask me to do that. But I kind of hesitate really telling you the truth here because I don't want it to affect our friendship and I don't want there to be a weird awkwardness between us. But I gotta say, I'm thinking through my schedule for the month and where I got going with my family. And as much as my heart would love to say yes, the reality of my schedule means I'm just going to have to say no. I don't want this to affect our friendship. I want you to know that I wish I could help. And I would definitely think through some other people maybe you can ask, and I'll be praying for you. But I have to be honest and say no. And you know what? I know that if the roles were reversed, I would want you to be honest with me. That's why I'm being honest with you. But I kind of hesitate saying it because I don't want to.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you hit on a few things there with that response. And it's such a great template, I guess, for us to use in that case, because you're letting her know that you are being honest. You're letting her know that I would genuinely love to help. You're letting her know, but I do not want this to, it's not about you. This isn't a personal thing, right? Like I'm not wanting this to affect our relationship. It isn't a personal thing. It's simply based on my capacity and how you're just putting it all out there. And it's one of those cases where people appreciate and really deserve honesty. And so I love that that's your suggestion, because honesty is always, somehow, in some way, honesty is always going to be the best way, even if we don't see it initially or something else feels easier initially. In the end, honesty is usually going to be the winner every time. So thank you for getting us started on that path and for that great little template that we can use, just some of those main points to hit on, because that is the hard part, is knowing how to deliver a gracious decline. And those were some really great things that will help us. That was packed full of information. And whether we're talking about people pleasing at the holidays or any other time of the year, people pleasing is really what I would consider a stumbling block for a lot of women, where we end up getting ourselves overcommitted and, again, creeping into that territory of resentment. And that is a place we do not want to be. So I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Karen. It was a great one that you are going to want to save for later, especially the holiday time. In our next episode of the Intentional Mom Podcast, I am going to be sharing some things I am not doing. So often we talk about things to do. Well, this is going to be an episode where we talk about things I am absolutely not doing. More details on that will follow. We'll talk soon.